Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Her Faith Inspires podcast, where we take cultural issues and we tackle them with biblical truth. This is my first solo episode of the new year, and I am really excited to be back because I'm excited about all of the things that we're going to talk about in the next couple of months, couple of weeks. I have some great guests lined up. I have more guests that are going to be lined up because I've been receiving books from authors and people who I think you're really going to enjoy listening to and hearing their expertise. So I just feel like there's so much to say. When you take a couple of weeks off and you get a clear head and you get to take vacation with your family and you just kind of unplug, there is really a rejuvenation that takes place. And so I think that's so important to do. I always try to take the weekends off anyways and really stay off social media and not really post too much, and just to give myself some rest throughout the week. And then by Monday, I feel like I can hit the ground running. But I don't know, for this holiday season, I was just ready to take a couple of weeks off. So it did me good. My family and I went to Disney World. I was kind of trying to stay away from Disney for a while, and I did for a few years. Actually more than a few years, I think 5 or 6 years. We used to go to Disneyland quite often and be living in California. So I thought I'll never go to Disney Park again. And then we took our kids to Disney World and our whole family went, and it was really fun, exhausting. I think I walked 20 something thousand miles. I always say the other one, I was telling somebody, one of my family members, that I walked 10,000 miles already by like 11. They're like, 10,000 miles? You mean 10,000 steps? I was like, oh yeah. Obviously, I needed more rest, but I walked 10,000 steps before like noon one day, and that is my daily goal. So by the last day, I walked 20,000 steps. My feet were literally killing me. Oh my gosh. I was like, ugh, this is what it feels like to get old. Like every bone, even in your feet, hurt. But again, it was so fun. Lots of memories made, and we're back. So even Albert and I were talking about doing a podcast episode on some of the most misunderstood, misused verses, Bible verses. Really looking forward to that. So all of that is coming up. I'm really excited for this episode here and the ones coming next week. I have Melissa Doherty on the show. So we're going to talk about New Thought and her new book, Happy Lies, that's coming out at the end of this month. Just an excellent topic. Can't wait for you guys to hear about that. We're going to talk about Botox and fillers coming up in a couple of weeks. And really, who defines what beautiful is? Like when somebody says it's beautiful, is it that subjective? Or, when we talk about beauty, even in physical appearance and as we age, what does that look like? What does that mean? So all that's coming up. But before we get into today's episode, I have an exciting opportunity for those of you who have a child the age of 16 to 22. I say child, you have a kid, a teenager slash, kid in your early 20s, which I have all of the above. You're going to want to hear about this. Summit Ministries with Dr. Jeff Myers. It's an excellent opportunity for young people to get immersive teaching from excellent apologists on cultural topics such as homosexuality, abortion, the existence for God, the scientific evidence for God. I mean, there's a whole gamut of topics that they discuss. And my son, Wyatt, he's my oldest, he went to Summit in the summer of 2023 and he loved it. And I had him on the show right after that. So like last year, if you go to 2023, September, October, something like that, he was on the show and he talked about that. He talked about when he struggled with doubt at the age of 16. So Wyatt brought home a notebook full of information from amazing apologists. And he talks about Summit and his experiences often. We often refer back to things that he learned there. And again, he struggled with doubt about 15, 16 years old, and he began to question some of the things that he was raised to believe. And he said he needed to know that God existed for himself. And he needed some questions answered. And I knew that day was likely to come with maybe all three of my boys at some point. I thought I might freak out when it happened, but I really didn't. I didn't freak out because I understand that everybody has to come to the knowledge of God on their own. Like your kid is going to have to come to their own, who do you say that I am moment? And they have to answer that question. God's going to come to them and be like, do you really believe me for yourself? Because you believe, or is that what you've been taught and you've accepted it blindly. And so that's a good thing because God's faithful to get our kids through those moments. But we also have to be careful about how we react and how we respond, right? So your kid isn't going to go find Summit and just sign themselves up for it. This is something that we have to be intentional about as parents, to get our kids, get them in front of good teaching and good instruction and good theology, because they likely don't know how to do that at their ages. So our family dove into apologetics and our confidence grew. So when Summit came along, Wyatt was like, "Oh, I want to do this." And it's 12 days, a 12-day camp. And I used to put on summer camps as a youth leader. I put on many summer camps. We had lots and lots of kids that went to summer camps, and I was in charge of the whole thing. I can tell you that we had an activities coordinator, we had teaching, we had worship, but it was nothing like what Summit does. And if I went back and was to do camps all over again, you can bet that I would have apologetics in it. I would try to take Summit's model, although I don't have access to their apologists, to be honest with you, but I would say, hey, we need to get this kind of instruction in front of kids. Well, you don't have to do that. You can go register them for Summit. And if you use my code, you get $200 off registration. But if you register them early enough, you get an additional $200 off. That's $400 off their tuition. And you can make payments starting now if you see that this is something that you're going to want to do for summer. That's why we're saying start now in January, register them, paying that off, getting that plan, because that's what we did when we signed Wyatt up for Summit. And my other two boys can go. Well, my youngest can't go yet because he's only 14, but eventually he'll be able to go. And I just think it's such an investment as a family that you won't regret making, because we need to invest, like I said, into good education, into good instruction for our kids. So my motto as a mom and as a teacher is this: I will give you the truth in ways that lead you to the Lord. And I'm going to do my part to invest in that part of your life. But if you ever leave, it won't because I didn't do my job. And so that's what I would say as a parent: make that your motto. You're going to do all you can to invest in getting the truth in front of your kids. And if they ever, when God comes to them and says, "Who do you say that I am?" If they walk away, it's not going to be because you didn't tell them. That's going to be between them and the Lord as they wrestle through that. And God forbid that ever happens. We don't want our kids to walk away, but they can still say, "It wasn't because I didn't do my part." When I stand before the Lord one day, I want God to say, "Well done, good and faithful servant, because I gave you your three boys and you did something. You did something with that. You took that responsibility seriously." So Summit is just another tool. And I don't know that there are a lot of camps out there like Summit. I can be honest with you. You won't find many. If you find, if you do find some. So check it out, summit.org/Shanda. My first name is spelled SHANDA, summit.org/Shanda, to register for the 12-day camp. It is the best summer camp I've seen, and your child will come home with tools and resources to refer back to for the rest of their lives from some of the best apologists in the world. Okay. So summit.org/Shanda. You can use my code Shanda2025 to register. Okay. The code is Shanda2025 to register your child. All right. So today we're talking about goal setting and seeking God in 2025. And we're going to discuss the following things. 1, how to set goals and how to achieve them. 2, some of my goals for this year. I'm going to share those with you. And 3, what does the Bible say about where to invest your time? And because when we look at setting goals, we're prioritizing those things in relationship to the time that we give them. So we're going to talk about that. So the first thing is, how do I set a goal and how do I achieve the goal once I set it? Everyone seems to be making goals and resolutions right now, Christian or not. And that's not bad. Everybody does that. They take advantage of a new year. It's like a clean slate, starting something fresh. And we want to make some changes in the right direction, right, for the entire year. So that's a good thing. But I would say as Christians, we should first ask, what am I pursuing and why am I pursuing this thing? That's something that's been on my mind lately. Like, why do I want to do this? is God being honored and glorified in this? What am I pursuing this over pursuing God? Those are just hard questions I ask myself to see how well I would answer them and to see where my motivation lies. Because every time you say yes to something or you commit to something, you're saying no to everything else. And there's something about me, once I say I'm going to do it, I'm locked in. Like once it comes out of my mouth, I am locked in and I have to do it. And that thing will literally drive me crazy. Not drive me crazy, but it will be like, I gotta do this. I said I was going to do it and it has to get done because I want to make sure that I'm a person of my word. That's one of the things my husband and I talk about often is that your name means something and your word means something because if your word is bad, your name is bad. So if you have a bad reputation because no one can count on what you say, then no one can count on you. It means something. So I'm very careful if I commit to it. If I say it out loud or write it down, I better be ready. I better be committed because if we're finite, right? So we have limits to what we can accomplish. We have limits to how many books we can read. I'm in the realm of people who want to read lots of books, and I love that. But we can only read so many books per year because even if you were to like speed read, there's this movie when I was growing up, I was a kid and it was cute. Now you probably watch it and be like, what the heck? That's like terrible, like terrible visuals in there because it's so old, but it's called Short Circuit. And this robot could like pick up a book and read through it at speed read. And I remember thinking as a kid, I wish I could read that fast. But even if you could, with your finitude, with your finite mind, you couldn't retain it all. So we're limited to what we can accomplish, how many books we can read, how much we can even understand and retain, how much weight we can lift, right? We're all of those things. We can set physical goals for exercise, but we're still limited. So we have to be strategic about the goals that we set. And since we're limited, we don't have capacity for everything, which means that we should be selective about what we do and what we give our time and attention to. Like we have to be selective about those things because we only have capacity for so many things as a finite being. So we need to consider that when we make goals. And Matthew 6:33, actually it was Laura Powell, she's been on my podcast a few times. She said this last year at the beginning of 2024. And I loved it. She said, this verse is all you need. Do this and everything else will fall into a place and you'll accomplish the things you need to accomplish. And the verse is seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given unto you. So what are all these things? People that think about, oh, all these things, it must be like the car, it must be the degree, and I'm going to get all these things as in material possessions. But Jesus was talking about the necessities of life. Jesus was talking about the things that we actually need for survival to live, clothing, food, protection from God. He's reassuring us not to worry about the necessities of life because he is our provider and we're just as valuable to God, or more valuable than the sparrows. So in every goal that we make, it should be on the foundation of seeking Christ first. So again, my question to you is, what are you pursuing? When I make that question personal, am I pursuing God? It's convicting because I have to say, well, no, because I'm writing this curriculum. So I'm pursuing the writing the curriculum. So I have to rethink that, reshape my mind to say, but I need to do it to glorify the Lord. Like I need to pursue everything I do, I need to pursue the Lord first. And so to pursue means to follow, to go after it. Like if I'm going to pursue something, I'm going after that thing. And right now, many of us are going after our goals, and that's not bad. So don't get me wrong about that. I think we should be productive as Christians, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But no matter what you're doing, no matter what tasks you're trying to accomplish or goals you're trying to complete, are you pursuing God? So let that be where we begin today and keep Matthew 6:33 at the forefront of our minds this entire year to help us get off to a strong start and say, I'm going to pursue the Lord before I pursue anything else because he'll help all of those things fall into place. So I intentionally put this episode at the second week of January because most resolutions fail before the end of January anyways. And I'm not one who makes resolutions. I set goals because you attack a goal differently than you attack a resolution. With a resolution, you resolve to stop doing something. And usually people make this commitment on January 1st. Okay, on January 1st, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Well, you're going to try, right? On January 1st, I'm going to quit smoking. On January 1st, I'm going to stop biting my fingernails. There's not much planning to what I've seen as far as resolutions are concerned. So if you don't plan, you're going to fail. If you say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in January, my next question would be how? How are you going to do that? What's your plan? There has to be a plan in place, and that takes planning, takes intentionality, right? So every goal without a plan will likely fail because planning is the preparation to succeed. I can't emphasize that enough. Setting goals is easy. Planning to achieve them takes thought and intentionality. So, how many goals should you set? Again, this is different for everybody because we have capacity for only so many things being finite individuals. And we don't want to unrealistically set goals that we're just going to fail at because we can't accomplish all that. That will be too overwhelming and you might give up on everything. So again, it's different for everybody. But when I plan and I set my goals, I look at Matthew 22:37, where Jesus tells us to love the Lord with all of our heart, soul, and mind. And then some translations say strength. So it's the mind, body, and soul components of the person, right? So I make goals in accordance with these three aspects of my life: my soul, my relationship with God, my mind intellectually, and my body physically. What am I going to work on physically this year for my body? So setting goals takes a few things. First, you have to be realistic. What can you do and what can't you do? So you have to assess your situation. Like, are you a mother of small children? You're not going to be able to read 100 books this year. Okay, 50 books this year. That's okay. 10 books this year. You may not be able to read one book a month. That's okay. You have to be, and I want to encourage the young ladies here because I'm going to talk about this in a little bit too. But a lot of times we can compare ourselves to what other women are doing, and you're going to feel like a failure. And you're not a failure. If you have little kids at home, and if you have, like, if they're babies, if they're toddlers, if they're in elementary school and you're doing homework after school hours in the evening, you have to understand that that's a season of your life and it's a good season to be in. You're doing good work. You're laying a foundation for the life of your children and taking care of your home, and you'll never get that time back. So invest that time there. You'll always have time later to read more. You'll always have time later to accomplish more goals and to put more on your plate. But right now, what matters is what's right in front of you. It's your family. So don't compare yourself to me. When I post pictures of my sourdough bread on Instagram, it's because my boys are 21, 19, and 14. I'm not changing diapers anymore. I can make sourdough. I can mess with that. I can put some time into baking and go type up stuff. So don't compare yourself to me because I didn't do this when they were 10 and they were 8 and they were like, 5. There's no way I could have done that. I was too busy with my family. They needed me more. So please don't compare yourself to what other women are doing. And please don't compare yourself to me. Even if you're a woman whose kids are older, but you work full time or you work outside of the home, I don't. I work at home. So you can't compare yourself to me. And what I'm saying is you can't compare yourself to other people. We all have different things going on in our lives, which is going to make us look at our goal setting differently. We have to be realistic with what we have. Your goal setting does not depend on what other people are doing on Instagram. Okay. That's not realistic because we don't know the backstory. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I work from home. It's easier for me to bake during the day while I'm typing stuff and let it bake in the oven. So again, be careful with that. Your goals have to be realistic. And then you want to plan. Once you set your realistic goals, and again, I look at those three components: mind, body, and soul. What am I going to do with my relationship with the Lord? What am I going to do with my intellectual part of who I am and learning and growing in knowledge and wisdom? And then physical, what do I want to do for my health this year? So then plan those. What do you need to do to be successful? Because you also want to plan for the failures. Sometimes people don't plan for failures. So when will you schedule that time to accomplish this? And if mornings are hectic for you, which I get up really, really early when I talk about my goals. I'll tell you guys about that. If I waited till my kids were up and they needed to eat, there's no way I'm going to put a goal in the middle of that time. I know when they get up and I know what I need to make for breakfast. There's no way I'm going to try to accomplish a goal and cook breakfast and get them off to school. That would be crazy town and nobody wants that. So be realistic with your time. What will you need? How are you schedule that in? And it should be scheduled. Goal setting shouldn't be willy-nilly. You have to be intentional about it. So how will you track the progress toward your goal? If you're going to lose weight this year, and I don't suggest losing 10 pounds in January, that's not realistic. You're going to starve yourself and that's just not going to work for longevity, right? So you want to make sure that you know how to track that goal so you can see, am I making progress? Um, just for an example, if I say, you know, I'm going to tweak my food this starting this year, I'm going to do less sugary sweets, or I'm going to cut out soda. I don't drink soda, but let's just use that as an example. Then I'm going to see, I want to see progress, right? So I might take a picture of myself every Monday, front, side, back, and I might measure, you know, my different parts of my body to start tracking my progress toward that goal. And I might say by the time March hits, I want to add in another thing that I want to substitute. Maybe I want to eat more fresh fruit. So I'm going to start thinking about one fruit a day. How am I going to plan for that and track that? So those are just examples of something simple, but people don't often think about tracking progress towards a goal. If it's writing, like I do a lot of writing, I want to be done with a certain deadline. I make my own deadlines on some things other people make deadlines and I need to get into them. So if it's something I'm making a deadline for myself, I'll say by this time I want to have this written. By this time I want to have this written. That means I know how much time I need to set aside towards it every day. And then I can look to see, okay, am I making progress towards that goal of February 1st? I have to have 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, whatever it might be. You want to track your progress. That's my point. And then consistency is key to success, period. People will ask me sometimes, oh, I want to start a podcast. How do I do it? You have to be consistent. You have to be consistent or you're not going to succeed. Sometimes people think, oh, I'll just start a podcast. Well, also the content matters and you have to think ahead to when you're going to put that out, how often. There's just a lot that goes into it. So consistency is the key to success for anybody. Think about it. When you're trying to graduate from college, you have to consistently show up to class. You have to consistently do the work. You have to consistently study. There's consistency. So you have to ask yourself, how much time will this take? When will I show up to do it? What can hinder me from doing this? Okay, so those are questions that you'll have to answer, and then get rid of hindrances. Again, if you're like, okay, I know that my family wants to spend time together every evening, 6 o'clock, everybody's home. This is me. This is my family. They're not going to want me on my laptop. They're not going to want me out in the, upstairs working out or whatever. Then I need to be done with everything by this time. So what do I have to eliminate? I might not be able to go out for coffee Monday through Thursday. Maybe I need to save coffee dates to Fridays. Because those would be obstacles Monday through Thursday. So I have to strategically plan even my socialization with friends because that's an investment I also want to keep making, but it has to be within a specific time, right? Does that mean I can't budge on that schedule sometimes? No, I definitely will budge on my schedule depending upon what my week looks like. But for the most part, I'm going to schedule those coffee dates, those other things that could become obstacles if I'm not careful, for a time that won't interfere with the other things I need to get done. Okay, so I know that's a lot, but I don't feel like people talk about that very, very much when we're talking about goal setting, because it is really easy to set a goal. That's easy. You can do that. But if you don't plan for it, then you're not planning to succeed, because you're just a goal without a plan is just a wish, and you're not going to work towards it. Okay. Now, here are some verses from Proverbs on goals. Like, what does the Bible say about a goal. Proverbs 16:3 says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. So I love that we're not just the ones making our plans. God is with us. He's helping us make those plans, and he will establish our plans if we commit our ways to him. Again, this is anchored in Matthew 6:33 that says, seek first the kingdom of God, right? So basically, you do your part, God does his part. Proverbs 19:21 says, many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. So again, we can make plans after consulting the Lord, but we want to leave room for him to lead us too. Like if there's a time when I'm like, I will not go pick up my phone from 10 to 3, Mondays through Thursdays. I'm just going to leave it. I have to get things done. But I see somebody calling me at like 1, and I feel like the Lord says, you need to pick that phone up. And I'm like, okay, is this really the Lord or is it me? And you just feel that like urging to pick up the phone. Well, then pick up the phone. I mean, we need to leave space for God to lead us, because maybe that's somebody who needs prayer, somebody who's calling on you, who needs, your help or something like that. So that's what I'm saying. Let the Holy Spirit also have his way. Don't be so legalistic about the plans. And then Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. So I talk to the Lord about all the things, even the plans and the goals, because God does care about that, because we're committing to these things, and that's time that we're putting into these slots of our lives. So it's important that we consult the Lord, so he'll give us guidance and say, where do you spend the best time? Where do you make that mean the most in the life that God has given to us? So for some of my goals this year, I try to get up. I get up earlier than everybody in my house anyways. And this is something that hasn't always been, I guess. I mean, my husband used to work at UPS in the morning, so he used to get up. He used to have to be to work at like 3 a.m. sometimes. So there were times when for years, he would go to work, and I wasn't the first one up, but I am now in our lives because he doesn't work at UPS anymore. So I wanted to make a goal this year. And even over my vacation time, I was like, I really want to make sure before I dive into anything on my list that I seek God. And I had to evaluate what my schedule looks like. And the best time for me to do that is to get up at 5 a.m. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like it. It hurts to get up early. Sometimes when your like eyes are peeled open and you're like, oh my gosh, like I am tempted sometimes to just be like, oh, just wait till, 6:30. It doesn't matter. You can make up this time later. I never make up the time. Like I have so much that I'm trying to check off my list before I go pick up my son from school that I have to do 5 a.m. And the first thing I told myself is, before I write anything else or read anything else from anybody else, I need to write in my prayer journal. So that's what I've been working on doing this year, is seeking the Lord first, giving God the first of my day before the day seems to get away from me. And then I have a hard time focusing on the Lord, because if I don't do that first thing when it's super quiet and there's nobody calling or emailing me or anything like that, then if I sat down with the Lord, I'd be like, oh my gosh, but I got to do this and I got to do that. And it's just it doesn't work out well. But once I finish praying, I go straight to writing and researching, because I have a lot of writing goals this year. And that gives me about an hour or so for this time to really have that quiet time that I need to focus, because this is a different writing project that requires a lot more of my attention. And so the very first thing I do though is I do get dressed for the day and ready for the day. Like before I sit down and write my prayer journal, my hair is done. I'm ready for the gym and my makeup's on. And so that way when it's time to cook breakfast, I could literally walk out the door. So I'm ready for the day first thing. So that's my spiritual goal. Like my time with the Lord, he's going to get the first part of my day. And so getting up early is how I do that. My physical goals are still the same, because I've been working out for so many years, like almost 10 years of doing just really intense CrossFit, which I do love intense workouts. and eating healthy and more strict. So this year I'm trying to evaluate, like trying to take out more of the processed foods, which I already kind of do. I don't eat chips and I don't eat boxed foods, but I do want to be more strict on that, more strategic about maybe planting my own things this year. I know that's crazy, but me and my husband have talked about it. We're going to get our own bees in about March. And so I want to make my and harvest my own honey from honeybees because I literally put a tablespoon of honey every day into my honey. And the local honey here is expensive. So I'm like, let's try this and maybe even plant some like some a fruit garden and stuff. So we're gonna see. I'm not a green thumb. I will say my orchids are alive right now, and I'm really happy about that because I consistently give them 1/4 of a cup of water every week because that's what the little instructions say. Outside of that, it's gonna die if it needs anything else from me because I really don't know what else to do. But the physical part, it's a habit for me now. So I'm going to try to increase that with some other growing food of my own. So another thing I'm going to try to do is switch my mindset about my physical appearance because I have a hard time with the aging process, which I'm going to talk about soon on another episode. I think it's going to encourage all you ladies because I think we're all there and we see all this, these women who look flawless and they use all these filters. We're going to talk about all that later, but I have to change my mindset about aging because it's inevitable and the Bible doesn't look at aging like we do. So that's a focus for me this year. And again, my physical goal is seeking God in the morning, studying the Bible, which I want to be more strategic about what books I'm going to study this year so I can get that plan set up. I'm working on that though. And then intellectually, I'm debating taking Nancy Pearcey's online course on Tuesday nights for toxic masculinity. I'm not sure because that's like 2.5 to 3 hours. And I already teach on Monday nights, and it's just too many nights that I'll have to be away from my family, even though I'm in the same house. So I'm really reluctant to sign up for that. But Hillsdale College has a C.S. Lewis on Christianity course, and I am really like that close to purchasing that. So I'm still deciding, but I'm leaning more towards that one. So as you can see, I mean, we're first couple weeks in January and I'm still hashing these things out. That's okay. That's okay for those of you who are like, January 1st is over and I haven't done anything. Okay, well, join me because I'm still thinking. You have to put some effort into the time, into the thinking because you want to be intentional with it and you don't want to fail, right? So I'm there with you. So I truly wish that there were more hours in a day. I really, really do. Sometimes I say maybe I should just get up at 4 or 4:30. I mean, I'm already tired at 5, but I just don't want to feel drained. I have to take care of myself and you need sleep too. So you have to be careful with that sleep thing. But I really do wish there was more hours in the day. So one of the things I was reflecting on the other day was the two examples that we get with how we spend our time, and these two examples are in the Bible. We have Mary and we have Martha. So let me read you the passage. Luke 10:39-42 says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. And she came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. So we have two types of women. And to be honest, I think that these two types of women, or even men, because you could have these two types of men too, represent the struggle that we all have inside of us at different times. Like I have a Mary and a Martha warring with, inside me at times where I want to sit at Jesus' feet, but I have all this stuff to do. They fight with each other. But Mary, knowing there were things to do, this is what I don't get about Mary. Okay, girl, there's things to do. Jesus is sitting at your house. There has to be food to be made. I would be mad if I was Martha too. Okay, but she didn't care. She understood that right now she had an opportunity in that moment to sit at Jesus's feet, who is in her house. Like she's talking about, wait, Martha, chill, calm yourself down because the Son of God is in our house. Like I know you want to do some things, but he's here. Like we should be listening to him. And she chose the spiritual over the physical, the to-do list, right? She chose sitting and learning from Jesus over serving Jesus. And that's a tough one because, you know, to me, there are times when I know I need to sit at Jesus's feet, but I also have to get the podcast scripted or the lesson written. And those are good things I'd say, but these are for Jesus. I'm serving Jesus as I do these things. But Jesus is like, well, I'd rather you sit at my feet because those things don't replace sitting at Jesus's feet. Jesus wasn't more concerned about Mary and Martha making him food as he was about sharing and giving them the words of life. So I'm sure Jesus ate that day at some point, but he would rather have had Martha sit at his feet than her go and provide a meal for him. And he told her that. So Martha, on the other hand, fretted over the to-do list. She was distracted by the preparations. Now, if I had to say, which one would I identify with more, Mary or Martha? Hands down, Martha. Like, I'm sure Martha had a whiteboard on her fridge and she had all these things listed on it. And then when she was like, I just want to check off the first thing on the list, that would be me. Because you don't know how good it feels when I'm like, got that baby done today. And I think I'm like Martha. I get Martha. I get her. Okay. That was Martha. She was irritated with her sister. And basically she's like, Jesus, okay, well, you got to do something about this woman. She's getting on my last nerve. She will not help me. And so she obviously saw that the authority that Jesus had, right? And she knew like, hey, he's teaching, but maybe he can tell my sister to help. And Martha was all tied up in knots and she really shouldn't have been. She was doing that to herself because nobody was asking her to do it. Jesus didn't require that of her. She was just focused on the wrong thing. And so when Jesus said, Martha, Martha, he said her name 2 times, probably to get her attention because she was so distracted. And he was like, Martha, Martha, look at me, look at me, calm yourself down. You don't need to be acting like this. And my husband's done that to me before, like, Shanda. But that's what I'm saying. I get Martha. And so Jesus said one thing is needed. I always think the Bible, like you don't even really need a commentary for some things, right? You just look at the words. One thing is needed, and it wasn't the food. Jesus isn't like, I need the chili verde that you're making, Martha, and I need to be sitting here teaching. No, he was like, one thing is needed, and that's the teaching. That's sitting at my feet and spending time with me. It wasn't setting the table, it wasn't the dessert, it was sitting at Jesus's feet. And Martha didn't choose that. And so notice that word choose. Jesus said, only one thing is needed, and this thing that Mary chose won't be taken away from her. We have to choose to sit at Jesus's feet, meaning we have to be intentional about it. When we make our plans, we can be overtaken by the list. And I'm telling you, I am a list maker. I am a scheduled person. I am a not fly by the seat of my pants person. I'm not. And I've always been this way. And I think I'm getting worse as I get older. My kids were scheduled. They had bedtimes, they had feeding times, they had nap times. I mean, my family would be like, can you come at this time? No, they're taking naps. My mom was just like, who raised you? But that's just how I am. Like I have a planner. I write in it all the time. I have, when the doctor tries to hand me a note or a card for my next appointment, I'm like, no, you just keep your paper. I got it in my phone. I wrote it in my planner. So, we can make the focus on the to-do list, but the focus should be Jesus and him first. And the Mary and Martha tug of war takes place in my own heart sometimes. Okay. And I'm sure it takes place in your heart sometimes because it's a struggle. But I think we have to identify the struggle. And there are times when Martha pins Mary to the ground and she wins in my heart. And then there are times when Mary wins and Jesus comes first. But make no mistake, they're battling in there. It's a constant battle. And I want to really try to fight to keep Jesus first. So Again, I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this in my prayer time, to be honest with you. That's why it's so great to meditate on the word and really think about these things. But now hear me out. This is going to sound crazy because I know that this isn't in the Bible. But if there was a third sister here in this time that we're living in, her name would probably be Monica. And she would be the one who gives a rip. She's like, I don't care about sitting at Jesus's feet. And I don't care about the to-do list because I'm going to sit here on the couch and I'm going to waste my time scrolling through social media. And Monica's going to think she's going to sit on the couch for like 5 minutes. But before she knows it, she is going to be sitting on the couch for 3 hours. And then she's going to be like, oh my goodness, I just wasted so much time scrolling through social media while Mary and Martha were over there duking it out about sitting at Jesus' feet or cooking chili verde. And I didn't get anything done. And that's the modern day Monica. That's the struggle many women have today because they want to accomplish goals, but they waste their time on social media because Mary and Martha didn't have social media back then, right? But that's why I say there has to be a Monica these days. That's my take on Mary, Martha, and Monica. So when you're accomplishing goals, you have to be careful with that Mary Martha tug of war. And then you have to be careful with a Monica who just wants to scroll social media and she wastes time. Because you know how many times I've talked to people and they're like, I was on social media too long and I didn't get anything done today. And I'm like, that's a waste. That is a waste of time. So what I wanted to do was that brings me to the one thing that can get in the way of accomplishing goals and what the Bible says about this. So here's the thing, and you're probably not going to like it because I don't either, but there is a benefit to getting up early, and there's something to be said about productivity versus laziness. So Psalm 5:3 says, "O Lord, in the morning you hear my voice. In the morning I prepare a sacrifice for you and I watch." And I like watching is you're expecting something from the Lord, right? But the psalmist got up early and he cried out to God and he is waiting for God's response. Proverbs 6:9-11 says, "How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? Sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber and want like an armed man." And I think this applies so much to the Monica, example of scrolling social media because it says a robber will come on you like an armed man. It means you'll be unprepared. Before you know it, you have missed the opportunity of productivity in that moment for that day. Because I don't think that, it's not like the opportunity has passed you by forever, but there are sometimes doors can close if we're not careful. So we have to be careful with just the laziness, just the laying around and allowing just that slumber of being lulled to sleep by social media and scrolling and just watching binging Netflix or whatever the case may be that keeps you from being productive. And again, I have to balance this out because there's a difference between needing sleep and loving sleep. Okay, we need sleep, but to love sleep means you'll just sleep like there's no limitations. We really don't need, when you okay, this is arguable for me. According to research, we only need about 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I thrive on 8.5 to 9, but I don't get that. I rarely get that. If I'm lucky, I might get that from Friday to Saturday, and that's it. Like a Friday night to Saturday morning. But most of the time, I'm getting like 6.5, 7 weeknights, and I am tired. I get very, very exhausted by the end of the week, just because I tell myself you'll get through it and you technically don't need a, a lot more sleep. So we have to be careful with that balance between needing sleep and loving sleep because we do need sleep. But do you love it to where you're just like, well, I'll sleep till I want to, until I want to wake up? Psalms 119:148 says, "My eyes are awake before the watches of the night, that I may meditate on your promise." It means that it's still dark outside. So again, don't waste time. Time is more valuable than money because you can always go earn more money, but you cannot get more time. The Bible tells us to be careful with the time that we have. And that brings me to Ephesians 5:6-16 and 17, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And finally, Psalm 90, verse 12. So teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. This verse reminds all of us to be mindful that our lives are not infinite. Our days are numbered and God knows them all. So I can't number my days as in I know when I will run out of them. It means to be mindful of that my days are numbered, that I need to remember that time is important and I won't get those seconds and minutes back. The so we have to think about that, right? So I have a faith planner that I created because I'm a scheduled person. I live by a schedule. And I think that can be very good, but I think also you have to be careful not to be legalistic with it. And so I work on that. And some people probably have to be, maybe some people are like more willy-nilly than they are intentional. But either way, the faith planner keeps me on track. And I wrote it for those of you who need to have accountability, even within the planner itself, if you don't have somebody else holding you accountable. So the planner has a monthly view, then it has a week by week view so that you can plan specifically for that week. So it keeps me from looking too far ahead. Like I might know, like I can forecast February right now. I know some things that are happening, but I'm not thinking about February yet. I'm thinking about this week, wrapping it up, and then by Sunday, I'll be thinking about next week and just looking at that 7 days and what I need to accomplish next week. So that way I'm not overwhelmed. So there's a week by week view. And then I have a sermon notes for Sundays because I feel like an interactive planner is something that's important. And it's for you to be intentional about your focus on the Lord this year. So if your sermon notes are in your planner, it keeps you moving through your planner through the year. And you don't just dump it because you haven't looked at it in a few days. And so meditating on the word starts with being a student of the word. And when you write things down, you're much more likely to retain them. So after each week, there's a reflection that makes you answer if you work towards specific goals this week, if you spent time with the Lord this week, there's questions in there that are already for you for each week. And it helps you hold yourself accountable for your goals. So this planner comes in 3 ways. You can find it at shandafulbright.com/shop. It's digital download for only $9.99. So go to the color section of the planner and get the digital download. You can print it off yourself, have it printed at a UPS store. Then there's the black and white. So the front cover and everything is still pretty like the color planner, but the inside of it is grayscale. So it's all black and white, still looks very good. People have ordered those and they still like them. Or the full color planner. That one's more expensive, but it comes with stickers for the year because a good planner is pricey. And this one, to get the good quality paper and the very pretty designs, it does cost more. And like I said, it comes with stickers. So check those out at shandafulbright.com/shop. Now here's my disclaimer. Again, let's go back to the people who compare. There are times when people comment about my books. Like if I post, this is what I'm reading right now on Instagram. I've had people say, oh my gosh, how do you do all of that? And, I'll post when I work out, I'll post what I bake. Instagram is Instagram. Do not compare yourself to other people. You will feel like a failure if you're not doing those things. And that's not what I intend when I post stuff. We all have seasons of life. I am in my 40s and I'm going to be hitting my 50s soon. And I didn't, I wasn't always I didn't always bake like this. I started working out heavily when I just turned 40. And again, it's like, that's not that young, so we have to remember that we can't compare ourselves to other people. If you are a mother with young children in the home, really love what you do. Really, really love that. And just every once in a while, scan the room with all your kids in there playing and try to remember what it sounds like. Remember what it looks like because they'll grow up. Like even, sometimes with my 21-year-old, my 19-year-old, my 14-year-old, there are times when I look back at pictures and I miss them being able to crawl up in my lap. And my boys are very affectionate and I love them and they give me hugs and everything, but they do grow up. And so I can tell you from one mom to another, that season of babies and little ones who need me to tie their shoes and all that, those days are over in our home. And one day they'll be over for you too. And I'll tell you, I don't miss not reading as many books back then. I only miss not being able to tie their shoes sometimes. So just enjoy those minutes. Let me be one to remind you that seasons don't last. Okay. Enjoy the time that you're in right now. And then remember, you have to be realistic with what you have capacity for. And the seasons of life, they help us know what we have capacity for. When you have younger kids, you don't have capacity for as many things like books and studying all this stuff and, working out for an hour. You do what you can do in those areas. So if you are older and you do have more capacity, then maybe you can take on more. And maybe that's your challenge this year. Like, I really want to push myself. But again, we need to be realistic. There's always time for growth in one area, or at least those three that I told you about: mind, body, and soul. And do what's important and focus on what's right in front of you with intentionality. There's no better life to live than the one that's real, the one that's right here in front of us with real people who really love us, who really know us. Social media is not real life. Pinterest is not real life. And so the goal this year should be to be more intentional with where God has put us. And we need to quit, for people who are on social media like me, sometimes you want to know what my reach is and how many people are following or whatever. And I do, for the most part, I do pretty good about not caring, because there's a lot of times when I don't care about that stuff. But every once in a while it can get you. And I have to remind myself, the most important reach for me are the people in my home. It's my family. It's the people that I get to mentor. It's the people that I get to pour into, that I get to look into their eyes and have conversations with, because you never know how you're impacting the kingdom just for being real right here in front of you. Okay. So let me close this out by saying this: Christians are productive. Jesus mentions this when he talks about bearing much fruit. And if we're attached to the vine, which is Christ, we will bear much fruit. So as long as we keep Christ first, we're going to be productive. And that brings me to my last point. You produce what you consume. It's the same as the physical. The spiritual parallels the physical in many ways. If we consume fat, if we consume sugar, and we consume all this processed food regularly, that's the key, right? Then we're going to be sluggish and we're not going to have the energy that we need to move through the day. So if we consume social media and we feed our soul the garbage things of the world, and we love the sleep, and we're not as productive because we're not attached to the vine, then we're not going to consume, or we're not going to produce things that glorify God and that produce the fruits of the Spirit in our life, because we need to make sure that we are consuming the word of God and spending time with the Lord, so that we effectively produce spiritual things that will edify and build up others in our lives. Christians are producers. That's where our goals should be built around, is being anchored to the Lord. And if you have a down day or you get behind, okay, who cares? Get back at it. Don't give up and throw in the towel. This is not a New Year's resolution. These are goals, and we keep moving forward to accomplish those goals and allow God to move in us, even if it's after the intended deadline. So keep going. That's my encouragement to you. So I hope that this episode encouraged you. Also, please, I'm asking you to leave a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app if you enjoy the show. I read all of the reviews and I'm very thankful for them, and I appreciate every 5-star rating, but I really need to keep getting this podcast out into the earbuds of others. So I'd appreciate you making sure that you leave a 5-star rating and review, and then make sure that you downloaded the podcast, because Apple changes things up. And so downloads are really weird right now because of the changes. I don't know why people change so many things all the time, but it's the nature of the beast. If you have any questions for me, email me at hello@shandafulbright.com, and I'll catch you on the next one.